I'm so excited to be here. Let me give you a lowdown of my last 30 days because I wanted to tell the whole story, but I just don't have time to do it. But it's been a pretty cool journey. So I left about a month ago and I headed over to Paris, and we did an acclimation camp for the 2022 World Championships for wrestling. And you know we have this partnership with USA Wrestling. And we went from this acclimation camp over to Serbia where we competed. And we had unprecedented success. The women's team that Dr. Rosie has spent the last 15 years pouring into, out of 10 weight classes, won 7 medals. 3 gold, 2 silver, and 2 bronze. Not to be outdone, the men's team that I've worked with, and Dr. Dietz and a couple other doctors, they won 8 medals. 4 gold, 4 silver. That means we had 8 of our athletes in the finals. And we've come such a long way. We took the team title. And it's just awesome to know that these principles have made such an impact at that level. So it's doing amazing things. These athletes live according to these principles. One cool thing I got to do was when we were in Paris, we went out to Normandy Beach to pick a possible site for an acclimation camp for the 2024 Olympics, which are going to be in Paris. And these people were pushing really hard to get America as the country that they were going to host for the Olympics. And it makes sense if you know history, because during World War II, Normandy Beach is where the Allied forces, they made a stand when Germany invaded France and they occupied France. And being in Normandy, it was a strategic location for them to go conquer London. And so we knew it was a pivotal time where we had to stop the Nazis. Long story short, we stormed the beaches and we pushed the Nazis back. We pushed them back into Germany. And that was the pivotal point where we changed the outcome of the war. And it's really cool when we went there, flying all over Normandy to this day. There are still American flags all over the place. And these people just want to pay homage to what those Allied forces during D-Day, nearly 250,000 Allied forces lost their lives. Most of them were Americans. And they realized that if it wasn't for us and those lives that were lost, we all might be speaking German right now. It was just really cool to be part of that. And it just like, experiencing that just like took me back to a seminar that I came to 15 or 18 years ago where I heard a story. You never know what you're gonna hear on stage and how often you're gonna use it, because I use this all the time. It was a story in World War II about Winston Churchill. And it goes like this. He went up to the front lines to boost morale. And he went up to this young private and he said, "How's it going, son?" And the soldier looked at him and he said, "Well, I'm doing all that I can, sir." And Winston Churchill looked at him and he said, "Well, the world's about to be taken over by tyranny. You can no longer do what you can, you do what you must." And similarly, our world, certainly our culture, is being taken over by tyranny of a different kind, something like we've never seen before, a nefarious and evil kind of tyranny. And the serpent has many heads. And it looks like medical tyranny and pharmacia tyranny, and it looks like big tech tyranny, and it looks like globalist tyranny. But make no mistake about it, I mean, there's evil at its essence. We have to identify it for what it is. But at least during World War II, the opposition, it was clear. It wasn't in disguise like it is now. I mean, you knew what the devil looked like. I mean, he had beady little eyes and a goofy mustache, and all the devil's minions had swastikas all over him. So it was easy to identify who we were fighting against. But now, it's a shroud of deception, and people have no idea. The truth is being portrayed as a lie, and the lie is the truth, and cats are dogs, and dogs are cats. And people have no idea what we're up against, that we're under attack, and be clear that this is spiritual warfare. Our spiritual consciousness is on the line. This is really a fight for the soul of humanity. And many people have no idea. And I think we see it clearly because we've been raised in a certain way. We have a certain level of understanding, the chiropractic principle, the major premise. We've been exposed. And once you see things a certain way, you look at everything differently. I think Martin Luther King said it best, and if you've heard me talk over the last 2.5 years, there hasn't been one talk that I've done where I haven't said this quote. But you want to talk about certainty, there's nothing I'm more certain than about what I'm about to say here. Martin Luther King Jr. said this, he said, "If an earthly institution or custom conflicts with God's will, it is your Christian duty to oppose it. And you must never allow the transitory, evanescent demands of a man-made institution take precedence over the eternal demands of the Almighty God." And what he's saying with all things, there's man's way and there's God's way. And man's way is transitory or evanescent. It changes with the blowing of the wind or the times or whoever's in office. But God's way is eternal and everlasting. And it's what was and is and always will be. And it's never going to be anything different. Where man is fallible, God is not. And in that quote, he says that we have a responsibility, a duty, to look at everything from a lens of things naturally occurring. That's what made Martin Luther King great. And before he was ever a civil rights activist, he was a man of the cloth. And everything he looked at is through a lens, a spiritual lens. And his words are beautiful. We have a duty and a responsibility. Like, we see things that people don't. We have to share this to other people so they can begin to see things for what they are and discern what is a half-truth or a full lie. And then people start making better decisions. And because of their decisions, they take different actions. And then they end up with different outcomes. And we lead them in a different direction. And you would agree with me that God has given us a healthcare system and laws and principles that govern health. And to the extent you line up with those principles is to the extent that you benefit from them. And you give yourself the greatest chance to become everything that God intended you to be, to reach your full complement for health and life, to fulfill your purpose. And when you do that at the highest level, you are glorifying God by your existence. And because of what we teach our patients and help them realize that, we are serving humanity. We're feeding humanity as well as serving God. And that's where, like the major premise in the chiropractic principle, we have to take it to another level. This is not a chiropractic thing. This is a godly thing. We have to bring this to the world about everything. It has to be expanded. Chiropractic fits within that mold. God works through people. And he enlightened D.D. Palmer to have this understanding. And he passed it along to BJ to develop it. As chiropractors, we have our own lexicon and we can articulate this to other people. But it has to go beyond that. I think as max living chiropractors, our major premise really needs to go back into beyond chiropractic and having an understanding of God's natural order, like Martin Luther King was talking about. Transcends chiropractic, it transcends healthcare. It's about looking at everything through that lens. And we have to be bold and courageous and stop being fearful or worrying what other people think. And the other quote that Martin Luther King said that I really haven't had a lot of opportunity to talk about is this. He said, Courage is your ability to push forward despite your obstacles. Cowardice is the submissive surrender to your circumstances. Courage breeds creativity. Cowardice represses fear and is mastered by it. Cowardice asks the question, is it safe? Expediency asks the question, is it politic? Vanity asks the question, is it popular? But conscience asks the question, is it right? And there comes a time when we must take a position that is neither safe, nor politic, nor popular, but we must take a position because it's right. Because it's right. The right thing to do is always the right thing to do. We must align with the truth all of the time, at all costs and all expenses. And I'm just going to finish here. I want to break that down, because Martin Luther King mastered the English language. His words were so eloquent and beautiful. And I said that quote, but you can't appreciate it until you look back deeper at it in the words that he used. Courage is your inner resolution to move forward despite obstacles. Courage breeds creativity. When there's an opposition, an obstacle, and you have courage in your spirit, you will go over the wall or around the wall or under the wall or through the wall. But you'll find a way to the other side. You don't do what you can, you do what you must. Cowardice is the submissive surrender to your circumstances. Cowardice represses fear and is mastered by it. Repress means to subdue by force. And we use fear to force people to make decisions. And you make decisions consistent with that, you become mastered. You are enslaved every time you make a decision consistent in that regard. Expediency. Who knows what that means? Anybody in here know what expediency means? I had no idea, and I looked it up. Expediency asks the question, is it politic? Expediency means the quality or state of being convenient or practical in spite of being improper or immoral. And yes, that's a political issue. They spun it so that if you wanted to go shopping at Costco or fly in an airplane, you had to put a mask on your face or inject your arm with a poison. And they made it so that you had to do that so it would become convenient and practical. But putting in your mask on your face is improper. That's not how you protect yourself from a pathogen. And poisoning an entire population of people is immoral. Lastly, we just have to figure out what our battle cry is. I can't figure out what the battle cry is of big pharma and modern medicine. It's like, okay, here, do what I tell you to do, and you'll get your greatest chances to become another statistic of the sickest culture that's ever existed in the history of mankind, with more cancer and heart disease, diabetes, obesity, depression, neurological disease. You name it, it's worse than ever before. That's their battle cry. Here, follow me. I'll take you right off the cliff. If you want the greatest chance of dying of COVID, you do what they tell you to do in America. We have 400,000 more dead people from COVID than the next closest country. A third world nation, Brazil. And third on the list is another third world nation that lives in squalor, that has 3 times the amount of people that are in America, and they have half the amount of death. My Bible tells me that a tree is known by its fruit. We have to look at the bottom line of things. we need to really assess what our battle cry is. And to me, it's all about the sanctity of life, the holiness of life, because God willed you to be or you wouldn't be here. And who is anyone else to decide who lives or dies besides the Almighty God himself? And we own a sacred trust that we must guard well. And shame on us if we don't get this message out to the masses. So my prayer for everybody is that you guys would just go home and realize the power that's within you and understand the cross of your calling. And it's heavy and it's a burden, but it's a blessing and a curse all at the same time. And the blessing is that you can help people realize everything that they were intended to be. The curse is that you may not be popular in our culture, but that's okay. When 330 million people believe in a bad idea, it's still a bad idea, right? All right, everybody. Safe travels. Love you guys.